My guest is Noah Eagle, Emmy award-winning play-by-play voice for the NBA, Big Ten football, and the Olympics on NBC Sports and Peacock. After graduating from Syracuse University in 2019, Noah served as the lead play-by-play voice for the Los Angeles Clippers for 4 years. He's also served as one of the Brooklyn Nets play-by-play voices for select games on the Yes Network since 2023. Noah, thanks for joining me on Sports Business Radio. How are you?
Brian, I appreciate you having me. I'm doing great. The NBA is around the corner, so what could be better?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that with you, but I want to start off with something that Bob Costas recently said about you. He called you the most impressive young broadcaster since Joe Buck. I've had Bob on this show. When you hear something like that from a broadcast legend like Costas, how does that make you feel?
Well, it certainly means a lot. And Bob, a fellow Cuse product, has been incredibly kind to me over the course of my career. But when it comes from somebody of his stature, and more than anything, I think somebody of his eloquence and his smoothness in the course of his career, of how he's gone about his business, it just means a little bit extra. And now it just forces me to prove him right more than anything. So I feel like I've worked hard to continue to improve my craft, and now that's going to have to continue and take it to another level and another level, because I can't let Bob down. But he has been amazing for me in building my confidence and continuing to hone this skill that I'm trying to perfect, which is impossible. And he's been the first to admit that I'll never be a finished product. So having him and just knowing that he's on my side of things has been incredible.
This is the family business for you. You've grown up around this. I grew up around sports too, in a different way. When you're exposed to it every day, all day, it can't help but seep into your bloodstream a little bit. Did you know early on this is what you wanted to do? And if so, what did you take note of that your dad did in order to help you today?
You know, Brian, I do get the question often, and my answer is the same, which is, when I was a kid, at least, or at least what I consider myself, because a lot of people I think still call me a kid. But when I was younger, pre-pubescent, I would get asked, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would very quickly respond, "I want to be a TV dentist," which is not real. I combined Dr. Phil filling a molar or installing a crown, and thought that for whatever reason, people on a Wednesday at 1:30 would say, "I'm going to sit down on my couch and watch that. I want to see how this is done." People don't like teeth that much, or at least I don't think they do. And so it forced me to pivot eventually. I think what it did realize, or what I realized from that, was I always enjoyed performing in some way, being in front of others and showcasing things. And I would say in 5th or 6th grade was when I started to shift. And by 7th grade, I really lasered in on sports broadcasting. And to your point, being around my father, seeing him wake up every morning excited about what he did, sitting in his office and reading through media guides, which don't even exist in physical form anymore, which is sad, because I would sit in his chair and I would pull out the 1997 New York Jets media guide and read all about Keyshawn Johnson's life and read all about Vinny Testaverde and go through the entire team. And that was seminal in building my sports fandom, and then eventually my thirst for knowledge within the subject matter, which has carried me into the career. But the second part of it was going to the games, and that's what you alluded to, of going with my father, seeing how he worked, how he operated, how he moved. And most people think that means on the air and his delivery, or how he was using certain notes. For me, it was more, how did he interact with people before they even got on the air? We would pull up, he would know the parking attendant. Then he would know the security guard standing outside the stadium or arena. Then he would know the cameraman. And then he would know the statistician and the runner and everybody who was around, of course, his producer and his partner for the day. But it wasn't just, "Hey, how you doing?" It was deeper conversation. It was knowing about their kid and what their kid was up to, or their partner and what they were up to. And that's the stuff that started to really add up to me, of Oh, this is a lot of the secret sauce. It's not just, hey, show up and call the game. It's how are you off the air as much as how are you on the air. And then the on air part of it was I could watch him from behind the scenes, see how he was utilizing different things, see how he was looking at different things than maybe the trained eye would lend itself to. And that's where I started just picking things up through osmosis. But I really didn't do any of it until I got to college, which I think was probably the best idea and something my dad really stressed because I didn't get there with any bad habits. I was a blank canvas and I got to outline it. And now I'm trying to paint and color inside those lines. And then, as I said, it's still work in progress.
One of the things that you do so well is you're versatile. You don't just call one sport. You can call basketball, you can call football, you can call other sports. I think that's really important too when you sit in your seat. How did you become so versatile and learn multiple sports? Because I've done play-by-play, not at the level that you've done it, but it's hard doing different sports.
Brian, you got pipes, man. I'm sure the play-by-play was probably high level. Come on, don't sell yourself short. I would say it's a good question. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got before I got to Syracuse was try everything. So that meant trying different sports, that meant trying different roles, and that meant trying different things outside of sports. And so what I did was, while I was there, I did basketball, football, soccer, tennis, field hockey, lacrosse, basically whatever was offered, I gave it a try. And what that taught me, to your point, was how to go from one to another. But more than anything, where could I find similarities and what are the differences and how could I find a way to marry those two things? So that was a nice exercise. Then, as I mentioned, different roles. So play-by-play, you have to be an analyst at some point, which I always found fun and different, something that you would never do after you graduate if you weren't a player. And me at 5'8" on my best day was never going to be a player. So it was a fun exercise for me because I at least got to start thinking from an analyst perspective, which then helped me as a play-by-play guy. But then I was a sideline reporter. I was a host. I was a reporter of any kind. And then on top of that, it was producing, directing, running a camera, running the teleprompter. I did all of it, editing video. And it gave me a greater appreciation for the overall team and how important every role is for the team and the eventual destination of the broadcast. And then the last thing I mentioned was trying things outside of sports. So while I was in school, I did all the sports stuff, which was hosting, which was sideline reporting, and then, of course, calling the games. But then I anchored the news. I hosted a morning news show. I hosted a game show on a PBS station in Syracuse called Double Down with high school students of the area. It was like Jeopardy.
I love it.
It just built different skills. It built different vibes that I could get to. And so what I felt like now going from sport to sport, or when there's a close game versus a blowout, I have these skills that I developed over 4 years of just trying different stuff. That really helped me. And then the next part of it is the evolution. You mentioned I worked with the Clippers for 4 years. I did those games alone on the radio. And so 4 years of doing radio, 82 plus games a year by myself, you have to wear all the hats doing that. And then you have to be willing to go different places. And so I do think that helped as well, because now I just feel more prepared for situations versus when I first started there. So then it just becomes about preparation. And I think the biggest key, if you're going to go from sport to sport, for anybody who's listening that's interested in doing that, the biggest key to me is you better know the rules and you better have just an overarching feel for if it's a league or if you're doing college, if it's a conference, whatever it might be, you better have just an overall feel for that. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a mastery of it right away, but you better have a good vibe on it, feel confident about it going in. If you have those two things, the rest you can start to figure out.
I'm real interested in people's process. You're going to be doing the NBA on NBC and Peacock. You're going to be working with some new partners. You've got some great analysts on there. There's even going to be an on the bench feature where one of the analysts is going to be on the bench. I'm so looking forward to that. I'm old enough to remember when the NBA was on NBC years ago, and I'm so excited about the return. What's your process like from researching the other team to building that rapport with the analysts you're going to be calling the game with?
Yeah. First of all, are you just excited for Round Ball Rock or the overall product? How's
The
that? What's
overall
the
product.
breakdown?
Yeah, the overall product. But I do love round ball rock.
Who doesn't? Yeah, who does? Although every time I keep telling everybody the first time it's going to get played for the first game we do, it's going to take a lot of me to not go basketball
Exactly.
for the SNL with Tim Robinson. I'm excited. I'm really excited. You mentioned the different partners. That always intrigues me, and more than anything, it gets me pumped for what we can be. And something my dad has told me to do and really got me. I did it this summer and started, but he's done through his career is keep a list of all the different people he's worked with. And I think he's up to 150 something or something
Wow.
like, yeah, a lot of partners. And now I'm entering year 7 of doing this professionally. And I think up to 74.
Whew.
And so the NBA is going to add a couple more into the fold. Now, some of them I've known for a long time and haven't worked with, Reggie Miller and Grant Hill. Some of them I have worked with in Austin Rivers and Robbie Hummel. So it's going to be this fun blend of old and new. And to your point, each one's different. Each one has a different style. Each one has a different playing career, different story, different history. And so, as I said about doing different sports, you got to know the rules and have an overarching feel of a league or a conference. It's the same vibe for a partner going in. You know, when I was doing the Olympics with Dwayne Wade, I made sure that he had done a multi-part documentary about his life. I watched that. He had written this coffee table book. I read that. You wanted to make sure that you just had a good background and really legitimately knew. Did the same thing with John McEnroe when I did Roland Garros with him last year. Read his autobiography because I wanted to get an essence of who he was as a person. So it just feels like you're more prepared now going in. You have a better reference point of different pressure points within their life. So I think that's part one. The second part of it is knowing the game. You mentioned researching the teams. And so I think knowing the teams and having a good sense of where guys came from. I've been really fortunate because, as we've talked about, I've been around the NBA, not just since I've been doing the Clippers, but my entire life with my dad doing the New Jersey and Brooklyn Nets. And so being around the game for as long as I have has really helped. Got a good sense of the game. And I also have a good sense of when it's my time to peel back. And basketball is a game because there's so much constant action that it is a lot of times up to me to know when it's time to peel back and allow my analysts to be the star. And then when it's time to make sure that I'm gunning it because the audience needs it for me. So it's a good dance of continuing to lead, then follow, and lead, then follow. And I think getting into that rhythm is pretty easy when you have a sense of the people that you're working with. I'm really fortunate because Reggie Miller's been doing this a long time. Jamal Crawford hasn't, but he's really good already. And so he's done more than enough games to know the vibes. Grant Hill has been doing this a long time at a high level. And again, someone I know very well for many years. Robbie Hummel, I think, might be one of the best analysts in all of sports right now. He is just absurdly good at it and sees everything. And I think Austin Rivers, who's still very new, but I worked with last year, has a chance to be one of the best analysts. He already is exceptionally impressive in how he sees the game and his personality and weaving things in and out. So those are 5 names that are going to just be really easy for me, where I can show up and know that they're going to have a mastery of the information in front of us. They're going to see things as it's happening very quickly and diagnose it immediately. So for me, that makes my job pretty easy. The last part of it is the on the bench thing. And I think viewers are going to be really into it because it's something so unique, so different. Hasn't been done at the NBA level. I don't know if it's been done in basketball, period, with putting one analyst on one bench and the other analyst on the other bench. It's going to be fun for me because I'm going to have the entire broadcast table to myself. So everybody's going to turn the TV on and go, man, does no Eagle have really bad breath? Or did he forget to shower this morning? What's the deal? But we did do a rehearsal of it during the San Francisco Summer League this year. And it was myself, Austin, and Robbie. And it went, I think, way better than any of us expected it to go. That includes production. We all walked away saying, wow, that really felt good. And what ends up happening is it's no different than any other broadcast. The first 5 minutes is kind of a feeling out process. And then once you get into a rhythm, you're in that rhythm and you guys all just feed off of one another. And that's exactly how it went down. So I'm excited because it's going to bring a fresh perspective. They're going to have much more access than you normally would just sitting over on the other side of the broadcast table. They're going to see and hear things that you never would have if you were sitting on the other side. And at the same time, they're going to be smart about how much they present, because it is a trust factor with these teams. And the last thing you want to do is put that in jeopardy. And so excited because it's different, excited because especially for the first game, those two guys who are doing it as well are just really good at the job. And I'm excited because NBA basketball is back. So all of those factors create a high level of joy and anticipation, I would say, for a couple weeks from now.
So the first on the bench, October 27th, Cleveland, Detroit. Are the analysts like sitting at the end of the bench? Where are they sitting?
A couple seats down. So from my understanding, they're going to be courtside. There'll be a couple seats down from basically where the coaches are towards the end of that bench. And they'll be directly across from me. So I'll be on the other side of the table and I can see them, which to me is paramount, because if they're not going to be next to me and we can't, hit each other or
Right.
motion to each other, I need to at least have eyesight at both of them. And having that even during our rehearsal, that was huge, because we could go verbal and then more so eyesight cues of, hey, you go. And I really was traffic copying from there. So again, it's going to be exciting. But yeah, they'll be right there. And I think the biggest things is, normally you get a sideline reporter that during a timeout is trying to hear what the teams are saying, but there's only one of them. And so he or she can only get to one huddle or the other, or maybe you start at one and get to the other and miss something big. Now you're going to have someone on either side dedicated to those huddles, and they've been in them before. Robbie played for a couple of years in the NBA before a long career overseas. Of course, was a star at Purdue. Austin played for a decade in the NBA, and they've been in those huddles. They know the battles. They know what they can and can't share. So having that, I think, is a huge deal.
I want to go back to your work at the Olympics with Dwayne Wade. You mentioned that. No, I'm not just saying this because you're on, but I thought your call of the semifinals and the finals of the men's basketball was as good as it gets. And you did everything from the golden dagger to laying out and letting the pictures speak for themselves at certain moments when it called for it. How did you, you're a young guy. I know you have a lot of reps, but I really felt like that introduced you to the world stage. That's when people started going, whoa, Noah Eagle is the brightest broadcaster coming up. Did you feel like things changed for you a little bit after that?
Well, Brian, first of all, I really do appreciate the kind words. And to answer the question, yes, I certainly feel like there was a different vibe. It's funny how things happen, because I think back to the whole experience. First of all, it was magical from start to finish. And Dwayne Wade had really never called a real game before and stepped right in there. And he was comfortable. He was personable. He was awesome the entire way. And I give him so much credit for how he handled that. And our whole team was, from Kareth Burke doing the first week, Zora Stevenson on the sideline the second week, production side, LaChina Robinson doing the women's side with me. That was amazing. We had a crazy gold medal game for that as well. And it just felt like everything fell into place. But I say it's funny because I think back to, as I'm sitting there and Serbia is up 17 points, and I look at D Wade and he looks like he saw a ghost, and we feel like, man, the mighty are about to fall. And I'm thinking about it because if the U.S. had won, and look, this is just, it's all luck, right? And this is how broadcasting works, and your reputation and how people view you. And a lot of time, Joe Buck has talked about this all the time, where over the course of his career, it feels like he gets all these people that say, man, you hate my team. You hate my team. Well, everybody in America was rooting for the same team here. Mm-hmm. And if Serbia had won, I just have to believe that myself, D Wade, Zora, whoever else was on there, they're going to say, oh, you were on the call for that. I don't like you. But because they came back, and then because there was this amazing gold medal game and this incredible once-in-a-lifetime shot from Steph Curry, it's the polar opposite. And so you don't get very many of those where everybody who's watching is on the same side. And I thought that was really cool. And it was really cool to experience that, to have that vibe, because I've done local teams, but then even now with NBA League Pass and things of that nature, everybody who's watching isn't always a fan of the team that you're doing. So this was the first and maybe the only time realistically that happens. It was incredible. And yes, people, I would say, still come up to me, still bring it up. Now we're well over a year later. I saw Tom Rinaldi this year, and before I even said hi, he just came up to me and said, "The Golden Dagger." So it has stuck with me, which is, I will take that anytime. I'm just glad that I had something that resonated with people, because I didn't plan it ahead of time. I thought of it right as the possession started and just let it rip. And that's really the secret in this. People ask about creating calls ahead of time, things like that. I always say the same thing. I don't think about it necessarily until you get in the moment. That's usually when it's most authentic. And you have to trust your gut. And sometimes you're going to whiff, and sometimes people aren't going to like it, but you have to be okay with that. And so I think I've really come to terms, especially after the Olympics, of just being okay with whatever I say in the moment and living to tell another day, basically.
Other than round ball rock on the bench, you have some great analysts. What else should people be paying attention to for the NBA's return to NBC and Peacock?
I think celebrating the game at the highest level. I think that's really going to be important for us, and making sure that we're telling stories of guys that maybe aren't necessarily stars, where there are some incredible paths to get to the NBA. And I think making sure we do justice for a guy who is fighting for a roster spot, or somebody who is an undrafted kid who's now making a name for themselves, doing all those types of things are going to be important. And I think that's NBC in a nutshell, just in every property I've worked on, whether it's been Big Ten or doing NFL or doing college basketball or doing the Olympics, doing the French Open. That was always, when I went into it, that was always the main thing that we were focused on, is what stories can we tell to elevate this product? What can we do to make sure that the audience is being served in a proper way and they leave knowing something they didn't know before? But then more than anything, I think letting the game tell the story for us. So we're going to have all that stuff. We're going to make sure we do it. But when the time comes, the game's getting good, we're going to make sure that the game is the star. And I think that is always an NBC staple. We haven't talked about our studio show. I'm really excited for that, because Carmelo Anthony is new and juiced up for it. Another Cuse guy, so I get to brag about him. Vince Carter, I've worked with now for years and was my favorite player growing up. I'm in my office. I still have a poster of him in his Nets uniform here. And I love the guy. He's, in terms of players of his stature, you don't get Hall of Fame players that are quite like Vince Carter. He is just as smiley, happy-go-lucky, wants to be around, and genuinely loves the game and loves the players, and I think wants to do right by all of them. And then you've got his cousin and Tracy McGrady, who I think is great. He's somebody who is willing to both celebrate and have harsh comments when it calls for it, is willing to criticize, and I think that's important. Maria Taylor, who's been a part of the NBA for years, dating back to her ESPN days. So we've got a really good crew. And obviously Mike Tirico coming back to the NBA, I think, is a win for all fans. So the overall crew is amazing. I think what we're looking to do should be a lot of fun, innovative, hopefully different, but at the same time, we're going to make sure that the game is the game. And I think that's the most important thing.
I'm so looking forward to some of the new voices that you just mentioned. I've been around Mello. I've had T-Mac on this show. Vince is great. We might even hear from Michael Jordan on occasion, the GOAT. So, yeah, I just think it's going to be a fresh new look at the NBA through the lens of NBC and Peacock. Let me ask you quickly, I know we have a couple minutes left, about your work with Big Ten football. The whiteout walk-off last weekend, Oregon. I'm based in Oregon, so we're big Duck fans around here. You're calling some amazing games. Ohio State, Notre Dame a few years ago. These are the highest level college football games every Saturday. You work with Todd Blackledge. You guys have a great rapport and partnership. Maybe you can talk about that partnership, because it seems like you guys have been working together for 25 years.
Yeah. Well, that's all Todd. I would say the best thing that happened to me was when I got hired by NBC. Sam Flood called me pretty quickly after, and he said, "Hey, so we're looking at analysts. What are your thoughts on Todd Blackledge?" And I was like, "Can you get him? Because if you can get him, yes, he's incredible. He sees everything. He's smart and well thought out and clearly prepared." And so when we did get him, I just knew that it was going to put me in a really awesome spot because I wasn't going to have to do too much. I was going to let him really be the star of the show and a lot of times drive the bus. I was always taught the play-by-play person drives the bus, but a lot of times with Todd, I can drive half the time and then he can drive half the time. And so it's a very unique partnership in that sense. And I think we've only gotten more comfortable together over the last couple of years, game to game to game to game. So now we get a big game like we did with the Penn State whiteout. We know our tendencies. We know when the other one wants to get in. We know when the other one wants to set us up. We'll have chats during breaks, all the little things that you would think of. That our first game at Penn State, which was our first game ever together, was not quite there yet, but it didn't sound bad necessarily. It's just not what it's become. But I give him so much credit because he's so well respected within the college football world. Every meeting we go to, you can see coaches and players, they value him. They value his presence being there. He's so well prepared. He watches hours of film. He reads countless articles, watches videos and press conferences. He just comes ready. And so the night before every game, we do an editorial meeting. We call it with our whole crew. And essentially, our producer, Matt Marvin, tosses it over to us. He says, "Noah, just take us through what you think we're going to talk about tomorrow." So I go through offense on one team, defense on the other, offense on the other team, defense on the other, and go through all the storylines, go through our meetings and what specific parts from the meetings I want to get in. And then Todd always adds from there. And that's, I think, the biggest key is because now anything that I wasn't thinking of that he's brought up, now it's in the back of my head and we can go in and hit the ground running. So I'm so fortunate to have him because I really just give it to him a lot of times. My job is so simple because I can just call the play and then say, "All right, Todd, you clean it all up for me." It's real nice to have him and Terry McCauley, by the way, who I think is the top rules analyst in the game. Having both of those guys, I just feel comfortable no matter what situation we're in, that they're always going to know the answers.
Last question for you. You've already given out some great advice about your preparation and the importance of being prepared. But if there's a student listening to this, if you're at Syracuse or my alma mater, Loyola Marymount, and you're going into sportscasting, what's some advice you would give, whether it's these are the classes you should be taking or here's how many reps you should be getting? You know, you talked about doing a lot of different things earlier in this conversation. What advice do you have?
First of all, LMU, great tennis courts. I've snuck onto those before.
Wow, okay.
I don't know if I should be admitting that, but I really enjoy. There was a good little setting there. Obviously, it's beautiful. I lived over right by there. Amazing campus. Every time I drove past, I'm going to be honest with you, Brian, I questioned why I decided to go to the place that had more snow than just about any city in America. But it all worked out. It all worked out. Yeah, advice-wise, certainly the reps, I think, is going to be the first thing. And I would go back to trying everything because you just don't know what you're going to fall in love with. You might have this idea that you're going to be a play-by-play person, and then you produce one broadcast and say, "I need to do this. This has to be, I love the control. I love to feel like I'm steering the ship and helping." And totally makes sense. And I think that's a great thing. And I had many friends at Syracuse that had that exact path, or directing or running camera, whatever it is. You just might fall in love with something that you never expected you would. So I think that's always the first thing that I say. The second thing I say is be more well-rounded. You can always be more well-rounded. And this was something that my dad really stressed to me and has told, I think, a lot of kids over the years. To be a great broadcaster, you need to be a well-rounded person. So what does that mean? You might say, okay, well, I know everything there is to know. I'm an encyclopedia about baseball, so I'm good. Well, no, because there's a lot of people that are encyclopedias about baseball. How are you going to set yourself apart? For me, I love to watch movies and television, read books, go do other things, have different hobbies, meet different people, see different places, because I think all of that stuff then can be used in your broadcasting. Being up to date on current events, that's paramount if you want to do a good job within the broadcasting world, even within sports. You better know other sports, and then you better know other things outside of sports. And so I think that's always what I try to stress to kids is just because you can call a great game doesn't mean that you're a great broadcaster. You might be a really good technical broadcaster, but what makes you great is how you can weave the other stuff, how you can invite people of all ages and backgrounds and interests into the broadcast. Because at the end of the day, you're serving the audience, whether it's a listener or a viewer. So how can you serve them better? By being well-rounded. That's how you can do it. So that's something that, and that's, by the way, similar to just the overall craft, that's a never-ending process. You want to continue to be a sponge and learn more and gain more, because you just never know when one of those little fun nuggets that you pick up on a trip to Wichita ends up becoming something you can use in a huge moment of a broadcast down the line. You just don't know. So try to just enjoy each moment, but also soak it all up in the process.
Noah Eagle, Emmy Award winning play-by-play voice for NBC and Peacock. Thanks so much for joining me on Sports Business Radio. Have a great upcoming season with the NBA. Continued success with Big Ten and the Olympics.
Brian, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.